Today we're going to talk about microplastics. If you've been feeling tired, foggy, or just off, and you can't figure out why, microplastics might be to blame. I've spent the past 10 years building a company that helps eliminate plastic from our daily routines, and I've seen the data up close. There are really only three things you need to understand: what microplastics are doing inside your body right now, where they're coming from, and how to get them out. So in this video, I'm going to break all three of those things down. First and foremost, the most important thing to understand is that microplastics cause chronic inflammation. Inflammation is so closely linked to premature aging that scientists have a new name for it: inflammaging. It's inflammation plus aging because aging produces inflammation and inflammation accelerates aging. They feed each other and microplastics feed inflammation. Now, inflammation and aging happens to everyone. It's part of being human, but to the degree can vary enormously. The most revealing evidence comes from people who live to 100 years plus. Despite their age, many people who live over 100 years have relatively preserved immune system function and resistance to chronic low-grade inflammation, meaning their immune system is healthy and their inflammation is low. People love to point to genetics, but studies are showing that it's actually a smaller factor than you might think. There are some pretty comprehensive studies that show lifestyle and environment account for the majority of variation in biological aging of identical twins, as in the environment and lifestyle that each twin has lived in and lived through has a greater impact on their longevity than genetics themselves. And lifestyle and environment is exactly what we're talking about here. So before we move on, let me quickly walk through what microplastics are doing to your gut, your hormones, and your brains, because this is where you can really see inflammaging in action. And this is not meant to overwhelm you. I want you to understand what's actually happening to your body so you feel inspired to make these changes. Your gut. Microplastics can change the balance of bacteria in your digestive system. Good bacteria can die off and bad bacteria can take over. This can obviously impact digestion, but it can also impact your mood because most of your serotonin, which is your happiness chemical, is made in your gut. So if you've been feeling tired or just off and you can't figure out why, this could be a piece of the puzzle that no one's talking about: your hormones. You've probably heard about this, but many microplastics carry chemicals called endocrine disruptors. Think of these as chemical impostures. I've made an entire video about this, but they mimic the estrogen in your body, telling your system to do things that it shouldn't. It can mess with your energy, your sleep, and your weight, and for women, it can mess with your cycle too. No bueno. This one's big: your brain. They're just starting to find out some things that are particularly alarming. Researchers have found that microplastics can cross the blood-brain barrier, and this is the filter that your body uses to keep your brain clean. Microplastics are getting through that, which is definitely not ideal. Once they're inside, they're causing, you guessed it, inflammation. We're just starting to learn the impact that microplastics can have on our brain, but considering this is an exceptionally important part of equipment, having microplastics in there is not a great thing. And finally, your immune system. Your body sees microplastics as foreign invaders, so it's constantly mounting an immune response. It can see them, but it can't beat them, and it can't break them down. So the response just keeps going and never shuts off. That's what chronic inflammation is, and chronic inflammation is the root of almost every major disease: heart disease, diabetes, even cancer. Okay, so I know it's a lot, but don't get overwhelmed here. Your body can defend itself against microplastics, and it is possible to have a lower burden in your body, and I'm evidence of this. I tested my blood for microplastics, and I just recently got the results. They were different across the two tests, which I took at the exact same time, but that's a problem, and I'll get into another video, but both of them came back exceptionally low. Honestly, I was pretty surprised because I'm far from perfect. I am very plastic aware, and I do try to live a very low plastic lifestyle, but seeing such a low number in my blood made me realize that these things really do add up. And it's the little changes that we make every day that dictate our health over time. Okay, so now that we know what they're doing inside of us, what are they exactly? So they're exactly what they sound like. They're tiny little pieces of plastic that are smaller than a grain of rice, and some are so small you can't see them without a microscope. The ones that we're talking about in particular are petroleum-based plastics. So they're made from crude oil into plastic that we're surrounded by every day. Microplastics get made by bigger plastics breaking down: a water bottle that sits in the sun, a fleece jacket that goes through the dryer, a takeout container that gets microwaved. These are all things that start breaking down the plastic that release them either into our food, into the air, or into the water that we're drinking. And here's the thing: every piece of plastic that's ever made is still around. It's just breaking into smaller and smaller fragments over time, which is why they're everywhere. They're in our water, they're in our food, they're in the air. We're consuming them every single day without knowing it. So we're gonna talk about where they come from, because once you know, you can start getting your exposure under control. Source number one, and we've talked about this before, is your water. Bottled water is the worst. A single liter of bottled water contains an average of 240 40,000 microplastic particles. Tap water also has microplastics, but at much lower levels. Source number 2, your food. Microplastics show up in food in 2 ways. One is from the packaging, which we've also talked about on this channel, from plastic wrap to plastic food containers, takeout boxes, even paper to-go cups. They shed particles directly into your food and drink, especially when they're heated. But the second is from the food itself. Fish and shellfish can absorb microplastics from polluted water, and there's some microplastics in some produce and meat as well. Source number 3 is your home and your clothes. Synthetic clothing like polyester, fleece, and acrylic, they shed fibers every time you wear them and every time you wash them. Those fibers float into your household dust and you can breathe them in, meaning they're nanoplastics. Some of the worst that you can be exposed to. Your carpets, your rugs, and your curtains, all of those can also be shedding microplastics into the air if they're not made from linen or some other natural material. Source number 4, your kitchen and bathroom. Things like plastic cutting boards, every time you use one of these, you are literally shedding microplastics into your food. Non-stick cookware, which we've talked about again in another video. Teflon is a PFA, it's also a type of plastic. It gets into your food. And personal care products like toothpaste, mouthwash, and floss. But it's not super helpful for me to tell you the exposures if I'm not telling you how you can get rid of them. And here's the thing, it's not about getting one big thing out of your routine. It's about the 100 small ones. They add up every day, and it's way easier to swap little things out than you think. Swap 1, the most important one truly, is ditch the bottled water. Get a water filter. It's the single biggest lever that you can have for exposing yourself to microplastics. My recommendation is a reverse osmosis system. You don't need to get one of those super expensive ones that goes throughout your entire house. You can just get a countertop one for a few $100s, and then of course use a stainless steel or glass bottle to refill it so you don't buy plastic water bottles when you leave the house. Yes, this one does cost a few $100s, and I am not sponsored by a water purification company. I don't care which one you use. It's just truly something that will make the greatest difference in your life when it comes to microplastic exposures over time. Swap 2 is actually free. Just never heat your food in plastic. So I know it's not entirely realistic to have none of your food packaged in plastic. What you want to prioritize here is if you're making hot food, put it in a glass or ceramic container. And if you need to be using plastic packaging, choose a food that is instead room temperature or cold. What this would look like is getting a salad or a sandwich when you are on the go as opposed to hot fast food. And then at home, if you have plastic storage containers, storing room temperature or cold food in those containers and saving the glass ones for anything that's hot. Cold plastic is still bad, but hot plastic is a fire hose. Swap 3 is your tea bag and coffee filters. A lot of people don't know this, but tea bags and cup filters usually contain plastic. The tea bags are often made with a plastic mesh, and paper coffee filters often contain plastic fibers. You want to switch to loose leaf tea with a stainless steel strainer and use unbleached paper filters if you're making coffee, or even better, a stainless steel French press. I have one, I love it. It does not take any more time than a regular coffee filter, and it can literally cut your plastic exposure by billions of particles per day. Swap 4, I'm going to be quick on this. Just replace your plastic cutting board. I mentioned it above, but you can switch to wood or bamboo. I think there's even some very pretty glass ones. Just every time you chop on a plastic cutting board, you're sawing in a little bit of plastic to your food, but a wooden cutting board doesn't do that. Obviously, you can be eating a little bit of bamboo or wood, which is much better than the inflammation that plastic wreaks havoc on in your system. It's a super cheap and easy swap that doesn't need to cost more than a few bucks. Swap 5, now this one either can be very expensive or completely free, keeping your air clean in your home. So indoor air has 2 to 5 times more microplastics than outdoor. So a way you can do this for free is opening all of your windows and doors for about 10 minutes a day and letting everything blow out, or buy HEPA air filters for each room to capture the particles and purify the air inside. Whichever one you choose, you also want to vacuum regularly because airborne microplastic particles are actually just, they kind of fly around with dust, and they can settle on furniture, they can settle in nooks and crannies, so you want to clean those out. Okay, so now we know what microplastics do to our bodies, and we know how they're getting in, and we're going to start reducing our daily exposure. But what do we do about the plastic that already exists inside of us? Your body has an amazing natural detox system. Your liver, your kidney, your sweat glands, they all work to filter and remove foreign particles. The problem isn't the system, it's the fact that the system is overloaded. It was never designed to handle all this volume. The best thing you can do is reduce the incoming load so your body can focus on clearing what's already in there, but there are also a few things that you can do to help speed up the process. Studies show that microplastic and the chemicals they carry can be excreted through sweat. Exercise, sauna, hot yoga, anything that makes you sweat is helping. Fiber. A high fiber diet helps your digestive system move particles through and out. Think whole foods like vegetable, legumes, anything with high fiber content can help. Sulforaphane. So this one's getting a little overhyped, but it's a compound found in broccoli sprouts and cruciferous vegetables. Early research is suggesting that it can help your cells clear the trapped particles. The purest form you can get is by actually sprouting your own broccoli sprouts, which I'm going to start doing. I will show you in another video how easy it is to do. But you can also get it from regular cruciferous vegetables as long as they're not overcooked. And if you are going to heat them, add a little bit of mustard seed to really help preserve the sulforaphane. The supplements I'm seeing, I personally think are a little overhyped. This is not a magic pill, but it is a really good tool to have in your arsenal. So nobody can live completely plastic free. I know this intimately well, working in a plastic free industry and trying to live a lower plastic lifestyle. But it is the small swaps you make every day that really can add up over time. Our bodies are remarkably good at healing themselves when we've stopped flooding them with the wrong stuff. If this was helpful, please subscribe. I'm posting every Wednesday and I'm going to be doing deep dives into the things that we're putting in our bodies every day, as well as the companies that are profiting by putting them there. And of course, these simple changes you can always make. Let me know what you think about these videos in the comments below. I'm really happy to be back creating, but it's also like I'm getting my feet under me. So if you can let me know what's working, what's resonating, what's not, it would be super helpful and I'd be super thankful. All right, see you next week. Bye.